Yikes. Okay, there we go. All right, good late afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm back to read some more from the book, Forgiving What You Can't Forget. And people ask, well, why do you do live feeds on this book? Well, because I'm holding myself accountable to read it, and because I also hope that it'll help other people who are struggling with the same thing. It's very important to be able to forgive and to move on with your life. When your heart has been shattered and reshaped into something that doesn't quite feel normal inside your own chest, forgiveness feels a bit unrealistic. At first, we say it's too soon. And then years go by and we say it's too late. I knew as a Christian I was supposed to forgive. I may have even whispered a faint prayer using the word forgiveness, but truly understanding how to forgive, I wasn't sure. And isn't it odd that though forgiveness is a major part of the Christian faith, most of us have never been taught much about it? We know God commands us to do it, but how? Why? When? And are there any exceptions? After more than 1,000 hours of studying this topic in the Bible, I can't say all my questions have been answered, nor can I promise this is easy, but I can tell you the Bible offers the truth about forgiveness that our souls desperately need. And best of all, God Himself modeled how to do this even when it feels so very impossible. Let's see. God's Word offers forgiveness with skin on. Sinless Jesus, absolute divinity and complete humanity, was afflicted and rejected, beaten and humiliated, spit upon and devalued on every level, enduring it all so we would never have to endure 1 minute of our suffering alone. And I was talking to my mentor today about this, that I was reading this book because she knows that I struggle with forgiveness, and she's prayed for me many a day so that I can be free from this. And she literally was talking about how Jesus, He was a perfect person. And when He tried to show love and compassion to people, look what happened to Him. He was rejected, beaten, humiliated, spit upon, and devalued. And I straight up told her I don't know how He did it, why He did it, but I couldn't do that. I just couldn't. So yeah. So I'm very grateful for Jesus. He came for us with forgiveness pulsing through the very blood He would one day shed. He wouldn't allow forgiveness to be shoved away with human justifications. For in the very instance we think we have landed on the forgiveness limitations, Jesus blows it apart with His multiplication 70 times 7 and His declaration that we must not entertain unforgiveness when we have been so very forgiven by God Himself. Forgiveness is a command, but is not cruel. It is God's divine mercy for human hearts that are so prone to turn hurt into hate. And what about that saying, forgive and forget? That's actually not in the Bible. You can still forgive even if you can't forget. We are instructed to let go of what's behind us so we can move forward without the weight of bitterness, resentment, anger, and unforgiveness. But forgetting, the only place that's mentioned in the Bible is connected to God's forgiving us of our sins. For I will be merciful towards their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more. Hebrews 8:12 ESV. Also, you can sigh with relief that abuse is not to be tolerated. Where the limitless grace of God provides a way for all to be forgiven, the truth of God provides appropriate parameters so that wrong behavior can be addressed and boundaries can be established with equal measures of mercy and tough love. I have taken an honest look at deep pain when unchangeable wounds feel so very unforgivable. I've wrestled through the unfairness. I've turned forgiveness inside out, examining it theologically, morally, ethically, relationally, rationally, and maybe even best of all, through the irrational but infinitely beautiful actions of Jesus himself. There are complexities that must be considered. There is no way to position forgiveness as simple when it is supposed to apply to instances that span the range of offense, from an inconvenience to a brutal murder. The cost of one is so minuscule in comparison to the magnitude of the other, and yet the invitation to cooperate with the forgiveness of God spans across them both. Yet consequences stay tied to the severity of the sin, and God's mercy is not void of his justice, but the command for us to forgive rings too crystal clear to avoid or refuse. Like me, for instance, I've received way more grace and mercy from God than I deserve. He pulled me up out of the gutter. But the fact of the matter is, I am still dealing with the consequences of my misdeeds. For instance, my teeth are about to, jump out of my mouth and run away. I'm having so many dental problems, and that has to do with having done methamphetamines as much as I did when I was running the streets and acting a fool. So that's a natural consequence of, living a not good life, engaging in sinful behavior. Just, it wasn't good. So please know, though, as a soul who has resisted seeing forgiveness as possible while weeping in my own seat of suffering, I don't say any of this lightly. I will not shame you for your struggle or blame you for your skepticism. One of the ways I learned to acknowledge what was holding me back from healing was letting a counselor talk to me about what she saw me doing to cope with all the pain I was in. I was in a therapy group where I was honestly feeling pretty good about the progress I had been making. Everyone there seemed to have a plethora of things they turned to when their pain felt unmanageable. Drugs and drinking were the most common choices, but Netflix and casual sexual encounters were also mentioned. Yeah, I'm not going there. And there I sat with my Bible in my lap. My counselor must have picked up on my overestimation of how well I was doing. And Lisa, let's talk about your coping mechanism. I smiled because I fully expected her to give me a pass on this round of therapy. I bet she in for a rude awakening. She did not. Instead, she said, you hyper-spiritualize what you've been through to the point where you deny your feelings rather than actually deal with your pain. Ouch. No pass on this round. I wanted to glare at her and dismiss her, but honestly, she was right. Her statement peeled back all my posturing and positivity and pretending. Eventually, here's what I had to ask myself. Am I processing life through the lens of the way I want it to be or the way it actually is? That's a good one. Most definitely. Coping mechanisms like being overly positive or hyper-spiritual or using substances to numb out may get us through the short term, but in the long run, they don't help us cope. They keep us stuck at the point of our unhealed pain. At some point, we must stop replaying what happened over and over again, taking what was actually terrible in the past and tricking ourselves into thinking it was better than it was. Hear, hear. Imagining the way things should be so much that we can't acknowledge what is. Yep, ain't that the truth? We can't live in an alternate reality and expect what's right in front of us to get better. We can only heal what we're willing to acknowledge is real. I've been deeply affected by what I've been through, and though I'm really good at decorating the words I've used to assure those around me that I'm good and even convince myself I'm better than I am, I think it's time to pack up the decorations and deal with what's really there. I'm both terrified of the stripped down version of my reality and slightly intrigued by the uncluttered nature of being able to see what's really there. Then I can better assess what state I'm really in and decide with great intentionality what parts of my heart still need healing before I can truly move on. So my counselor wisely pointed out some hyper-spiritual statements I've made to give the appearance that my heart is more healed than it actually is. I'm good, I'm fine, I've decided to move on. They're lost for walking away from me. God will eventually make everything all right. As a Christian, I know I should forgive, so I have. What's in the past is in the past. I'm just walking forward. No big deal. There's so much to be thankful for, so I'm just choosing to be grateful. Who has the time or energy to unpack why this happened and how it affected me? Let's just move on. I'm mature enough to say it is what it is and get over it. Yes, this really resonates with me too. And basically what she's saying is, that's a way of deflecting, and not dealing with that pain. And I can't blame her. It's hard to try to tackle something like that. It's very uncomfortable. You may be thinking, wait a minute, those statements aren't bad. Well, I agree, unless you're using them and they are keeping you stuck in a bad place. Yep. Putting on a smiling face while filled with unhealed hurt inside is a setup for an eventual blow-up. Sometimes it seems easier to deny my pain than to do the hard work to deal with and heal what's really there. C.S. Lewis wrote, everyone says forgiveness is a lovely idea until they have something to forgive. Whether you're knee-deep in pain and resonate with the list of resistance feelings described at the beginning of this chapter or denying your pain as in the list just above, let me assure you, forgiveness is possible. And it is good. Your heart is much too beautiful a place for unhealed pain. Your soul is much too deserving of freedom to stay stuck here. Forgiveness is not adding on top of your pain a misery too great to bear. It is exchanging bound up resentment for a life-giving freedom, thus making the mystery of the workings of God too great to deny. On earth, we usually only get to see people operating in the flesh. It is expected that kindness is repaid with kindness, and no one is surprised when anger is repaid with anger. We see it every day. It seems if we have a pulse, we also have stories of when we've been injured, hurt, wronged, and brokenhearted by the choices of another. Unhealed hurt often becomes unleashed hurt spewed out on others. It's so very common to be very offended, even with Christians, even in churches, even with friends who used to pray together, and even in families that have Bibles in every room of their houses, yep. And even with me, when the pain is so deeply personal, it's hard for my reactions to stay biblical. It's hard not to eventually lose it when hurt just keeps getting added on to hurt. But I can also tell you something I've seen with my own eyes that's more astonishing than what I can possibly express through pixelated letters on a printed page. When someone, by the power of the Spirit of God, overrides the resistance of the flesh and the pull of unforgiveness, it's shocking. It's one of the rarest moments in the lives of everyone looking on. It's when you get to see with your physical eyes evidence of the Spirit of God is real, as if you can touch it. It is a moment no one forgets. Almost done with chapter 2. Woohoo! A couple more paragraphs and then we'll be done with chapter 2. When this world so saturated with flesh resenting flesh, hearts hating hearts, fists slamming fists, pride rising against pride, suddenly sees someone dropping their sword and daring to whisper, I forgive, it stops all. In the split second of the utterance, evil is arrested, heaven touches earth, and the richest evidence of the truth of the gospel reverberates, not just that day, but for generations to come. While salvation is what brings the flesh of a human into perfect alignment with the Spirit of God, forgiveness is the greatest evidence that the truth of God lives in us. And none who sees this can walk away unaffected. I'm so glad I saved you a seat at this table. And that is the end of chapter 2. I hope you've gotten something out of this. Join me again as I read some more, probably tomorrow. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps me out a lot. And I want to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of January, but I can't do that without you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening. Like, share, and, become a subscriber. Talk to y'all another time. Have a wonderful night. Bye.